If you've ever gone to Home Depot looking for a paintbrush for a household project, you've run across the Wooster Brush Company. On this episode of Boundary Breakers, I sit down with the Wooster Brush Company's president, Mr. Ben Maibach, for a fascinating discussion about the Wooster Brush Company. This company's operated from the same location in Ohio for 173 years. They care a lot about their 600 plus employees, so much so that they have not laid off a single employee since 1954. This is a fascinating company with an intriguing story, so I think you're going to love this episode. Boundary Breakers is brought to you by Carter & Clark. Could you give us just a little bit of background on your early life, kind of where you grew up, a little bit of family stuff, so the audience could know a little bit about who you are?
Sure, yeah. Kind of the homegrown story in this case. I grew up in Wooster, Ohio, where Wooster Brush is located. Went to Wooster High School, and then chose to go to the College of Wooster for a couple of reasons. But one, my dad was ill at the time, and I wanted to stay close. Second, a company called Rubbermaid gave a scholarship to a Wooster High School kid that was going to the College of Wooster, and that helped pay a good portion of my college education. And so what happened as part of that also was an internship at Rubbermaid that I was able to do through college, which was really eye-opening because Rubbermaid was going through some transition at the time, and so kind of had 2 years interning under what I would call old Rubbermaid. Then the Newell Rubbermaid acquisition happened, and I had a couple of years with the Newell Rubbermaid leadership. And then a whole new wave of folks from DeWalt came in and ran the company. And so in my first kind of 6 years, really, some as an intern, and then my first couple of years when I started right out of school, got to see a lot of different things from the same company. And so it was very, very interesting, eye-opening, and I think gave me a good background in some parts of business for sure, particularly at public companies. And then so I started my career at Rubbermaid, was in mostly marketing roles, went down and was out in the field for a while in a sales role, and then came back to headquarters. Went to Moen for a little while. In between was mostly in marketing there, and then went to a small privately owned company called Waxman Consumer Products for about 10 years before I came to Wooster Brush here 10 years ago. And so, worked for a couple of big companies with brands, a small company with no brands, and you learn that you have to sell in a lot of different ways when you don't have a brand. Like we had at Rubbermaid and Moen. Waxman was more private label stuff. And so to come to Wooster Brush, private company with a very strong brand, was sort of a perfect fit for me, especially since I lived in this town pretty much that whole time throughout the career. So that's kind of the quick background on my work
Your
life.
early life. Yeah. No, it's interesting. So was the Wooster Brush Company, was that a place that you sort of always had your eye on, or that you wanted to work, or did you have a connection there, or is this just complete coincidence that you went to Wooster High School, Wooster College, and now you're at Wooster Brush?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a complete coincidence, but I would say that growing up, I knew very few people that worked at Wooster Brush, and I went to school with a couple of the guys. Our retired VP of sales and our retired VP of marketing. Went to school with their kids. And so we were about the same age in school. And so when we would travel together to trade shows in my other jobs, I would always end up on the same plane with them or talking to them. And we would just always talk because we sort of knew each other through that. But I had never really, targeted Wooster Brush. And honestly, sadly, didn't know as much about it as I should have growing up in the town. And so when I got the opportunity to come here, it coincided with when I had my first child. So the hour drive up to Cleveland wasn't as appealing anymore. And so it really worked out well, and came here in a sales role, and then transitioned to president about 5 years in. And so working on the fifth year as president now. Yep.
That's great. Well, so when you got out of school, you mentioned that you started mostly in sales and marketing roles. How did you end up either being pushed or gravitating more toward executive management or leadership type roles?
Sure. I think I always, really from my history growing up on sports teams and things like that, I would say I gravitated towards leadership roles. In those, sometimes by accident, sometimes with a little more effort. And so when I got into business, I think it just I always naturally felt like I was a leader or could lead. And so out of school, my first job, I'm not sure I was ready to lead anybody, quite frankly. But one of the cool things about working at a big company when you're small is you get to see lots of different leaders. You get to see how they operate. You get to understand kind of the things that you like about leaders and the things you don't like about certain leaders. And so it was a great educational experience, kind of growing up. And I think the sports background really helped me, understand at an early age that not everybody's motivated by the same tactics. And so trying to find a balance and willingness to motivate everybody is a little bit of the, the stuff that's been the same throughout. And so I started in very, what I would call low-level marketing roles at Rubbermaid. And, my internships were a lot of times collecting, I can't think of what the pictures were called on a carousel, that went around the carousel.
The little Polaroid, the slide.
Yeah, the slides. I can't think of what they're called. I'm thinking of the Mad Men episode right now. They're
like click, 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 and
click,
then it goes
click,
to the next one. Click, click,
so
click.
I spent, one of my summers interning just converting those to digital files when that digital process was happening, kind of in the mid '90s, late '90s, and so started in a marketing role, looked around the company and kind of said, well, who are the busiest people? At the time, it was product managers at Rubbermaid, and so decided, well, I got to figure out how to get in product management. And so I would just find the busiest people and ask them if I could help them. And everybody wanted help, and so you got to learn that way a lot, even though it kind of wasn't in my exact position. Tried to sort of just help the busiest people. You do that. So pretty soon, if you're good at it, they'll bring you along. And I was fortunate along the way to have a lot of good managers, a lot of good leaders that took care of my career, quite frankly, and helped pull me along. So it was pretty lucky guy that way.
No, that's great. That's great. Well, so you mentioned that you came to Wooster Brush. So it's pronounced Wooster, right? Not Wooster.
Wooster, correct.
Wooster.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Just making sure.
That's how we know. Right there.
Yeah, I gotcha. Gotcha. So, all right. So you went to Wooster Brush in a sales role, you said, right?
Correct. Yeah, I was. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I just think this is really interesting. There are a lot of folks that will listen to this podcast that may be early in their career, or maybe late in their career, and the idea of going to a privately held business or any business, frankly, in one particular role, a sales role, for example, and then making it into the president's seat there's a lot of people that would love to follow that path. And so I want to spend some time hearing about how that went, right? So when you first started there to when they asked you or promoted you into that seat. So tell us about when you first came to Wooster as a salesman or salesperson.
Yeah. So when I came initially, we had a vice president of sales who called on national accounts, who was retiring. And so Wooster Brush has always been very good about bringing on people, particularly in retirement cases, to help train with the current person. And this particular gentleman was here for 42 years. So he knew Wooster Brush in and out. And so I came with him. I came on as a director, I think, and then he retired 6 or 8 months later, and then became vice president of national account sales at that time. And so, it was interesting. I came from a company that was private label, mostly import, and I always describe it as you're kind of swimming in the deep end, just trying to keep your head above water in those cases. And there's lots of fires to put out every day. And then you come to a company that's been established for as long as Wooster Brush has and has the brand name that Wooster Brush has. And it's just a different animal altogether. And so, at first, it was actually kind of challenging to try to figure out what to do, because in past roles, you kind of had to do what your hair's on fire, you handle it. And in this case, what Wooster Brush has allowed me to do is really start to think more strategically about the business and go a little bigger picture. And I think that was helpful. Those are things you always try to do in every role, but it's easier to think when you don't have 1,000 fires all around you.
For sure.
So we did that. So we did that. Had a great team of people here. There's so much knowledge in this company. So coming in as a new guy, the average tenure I think at the time was about 17 years, and we have close to 600 employees. So it was the knowledge around you. It was not uncommon to have 30, 40 years of people with knowledge. And so you can rely on them, right? And you can kind of set the strategy. They know how to block and tackle anything that comes their way. They've been doing it for so long, and the knowledge base was so great, really, in all areas of the business, that you were able to sort of think more strategically in every role, and so that's what I really enjoyed kind of the most when I first came to Wooster Brush, which felt a little different than some of the other places, particularly where I came from most recently. But so we did that, and when you're allowed to think strategically, you're also allowed to think about things that maybe are outside of the scope. And I'll relate it back to the first story. When I was 22 at Rubbermaid, I looked around and said, "Who's the busiest?" And in our case, the president was one of the busiest guys here at Wooster Brush. And I said, "Well, what do you need help with?" And he said, "Well, healthcare. Healthcare is kind of a big thing that we have to tackle." So I said, "Well, I'd like to be on the healthcare team." And so, all of a sudden I'm learning about, we still provide retirement for our post-retirement healthcare for our employees. So I learned a lot about Medicare and all the supplements and things like that. And I sort of laugh. I'm in my mid-30s at the time, and know as much about retirement healthcare as probably anybody at that point. Maybe not anybody, but any salesperson for sure. And so just, again, helped. I just tried to find the problems, help on the problems. I love solving problems. That's kind of what keeps me going and get me out of bed every morning, keeps me going. And so, the same thing that I did when I was 22, I did when I was 35 and 40, and, kind of just tried to help where there were problems. And when you help and you're part of some great solutions, then you get sort of noticed maybe for more than just sales.
Right.
And I think that's what we try to do here. Bill Faggart was our previous president, and he was just a great mentor to me in so many ways, and still is. He's the vice chairman of our board now, and he was ready to retire, and he kind of tapped me on the shoulder, and then has helped me through the transition, and then it's just been awesome. So yeah.
I love that story. And one of the things that I try to do in talking to all these extraordinary people is I try to understand what it is about that particular person or that particular group that has allowed them or facilitated their rise in their career.
Yeah.
And whether it's trying to understand common links between everybody, or just really trying to dig around to understand what they may have done differently than their peers. It's something that is really interesting to me, and I think it's something that isn't talked about enough, particularly among younger generations, because there are kids out there or younger professionals that are like, I want to do more. I'd love to be a president one day. What are the things that I can do? And what I heard you just say is to me, I think is such a great example, is that you volunteered for things and you looked for ways to be able to help. And thankfully sounds like there was a big healthcare project. And so that was an opportunity for you to show who you were, what you could do. to others around you, and you proved that you were a great leader through a project that you volunteered for.
Yeah, and then some other ones you just sort of create. So before I became president, we also got to kind of rebrand the company, and so you've got we're 173 years old now, and we've gone through some rebranding. But you can imagine over time, lots of different stuff happens to your brand, and so we really wanted to tighten it back down, and we did that. So in 2019, myself and our director of marketing got to lead the rebranding effort. And so that was another sort of non-sales activity that was awesome. I mean, my background helped me there a little bit with some of the marketing roles that I had when I was younger. But, those are the things that when I look back on my sales career, I'm most excited about, and they have nothing to do with sales or selling to customers, I should say. I think branding is a big part of sales.
For sure.
For long term.
Sure.
But yeah.
Well, I think this is a good point. So tell us about the Wooster Brush Company and the paint application industry in general. I'll tell you maybe what I know about the business, very little, but what I know about the business as a consumer, and then you can correct me where I'm wrong. I mean, I have purchased a lot of your products. I tend to do a lot of DIY stuff around the house, and whenever there's any type of painting, you can get like the 79-cent, I won't use the name, but store brand, paintbrushes where the things fall off as soon as you try to put it somewhere. I mean, as soon as you try to paint something, and then you guys have a particular product for like trim, and it's like a stubby brush for close edges that I have used before. And you have the sort of the Cadillac top of the line paintbrush selections at the big box store where I shop.
Yeah.
But so help us understand the world of paintbrushes and paint application and how Wooster fits into that.
Yeah. Well, first, thank you for buying Wooster brushes. We appreciate that. That's what keeps us going. And the Wooster Brush. First, a little bit about the Wooster Brush Company. So, like I mentioned, we were started in 1851. So, pre-Civil War, if you put that into context, and it was sort of started by accident. It's kind of a great story, but our founder, Adam Foss, went to an unclaimed freight auction. So back then, picture storage wars of today, where you kind of cut the lock off the storage, open it up, see what's inside. That's kind of what happened with Adam Foss back in 1851. He was at a reclaimed freight sale, opened it up, and it was hog bristle, which at the time was used to make paintbrushes. We still do use that a little bit today, but he brought that crate, up to Wooster, Ohio, where his brother was living, and they started making brushes by hand right here in 1851. And so, from there, they moved around a little bit, but we've been in our current location since 1909. And so and before that, it was just a couple of blocks up the road. But we've added on, obviously, a lot since 1909 and grown substantially over that time. But it's really been a company that's been about people pretty much from its entirety. In 1917 or so, we established a profit sharing plan that was way ahead of its time, and we still operate that today. And the Foss family, who started Wooster Brush, they're not involved anymore, but they were all about people and put people first. And so when we look at our company today, we really do the same thing. We talk a lot about what's our purpose, and we say our purpose is people. And we group those people into three groups. And so when we're making decisions, that's what we're focused on. And the first group is our employees and their families. And so we try to support those folks the best we can through the years. And we do that in a couple of ways, but some of the more astounding ways, I think. We haven't laid anybody off since 1954. Her name was Bertha Harold. We hired her back a week later, and she eventually became a shareholder of the company. And so, obviously I wasn't around in 1954, but that amount of data is still sort of out there, and her name is still out there because it's such an important part of who we are. And so a lot of companies use layoffs as a business tool, and we believe that's the worst thing you can do to a family, is lay off somebody who's the most disruptive. And so we really go out of our way not to do that. And there's been lots of times since 1954 where it would have made business sense in a normal company. I call us, maybe we're abnormal, where it would have made sense to lay people off, and we've chosen not to do that. And a couple of the most recent ones, kind of the 08, 09 crash, would have been a good example. COVID, when we talk about standing behind our people, we actually paid our people. They had the option to take 4 weeks at home when that first started. We didn't know exactly what was happening health-wise, and so they could either stay at home, or if they did come in, we paid them time and a half the whole time. And so we kind of put our money where our mouth is a few times. We still don't charge to be on our healthcare plan. We have very low deductibles, very low max out of pockets. We're talking about $1,500 max out of pockets, and that's and nothing to pay to be on those plans. And so we've really tried to have some of the best benefits. We still offer post-retirement health care. We still have a small pension, not like a full pension, but a pension that's part of that. And then profit sharing that's both deferred and cash each year. So, among other things, we really try to put our employees and their families first. And so we focus on that. The second group that we talk about in terms of people is our end users, folks like you, who use our products, right? Who are either a DIYer like yourself, likely painting your greatest asset, which is your house, or you're a professional painter who's painting someone else's house for a living. And so we have to make sure that we maintain and keep those people having good experiences. And we'll talk about it a little bit when we talk about the paintbrush industry. But what we're trying to do is give people better results with less effort. And that's the simple thing that Wooster Brush does with our products, is we want to make painting enjoyable for you, so you do it again. And if you buy some of the less quality products, you can end up spending more time on the wall, and oftentimes you actually waste more paint. And so you should have just spent the extra couple of bucks on the brush or roller because you wasted it on paint.
My grandfather used to say all the time, he said, "Look, I'm too poor to buy cheap."
Yeah. And that's what we think too. We can keep our stuff. If you clean a brush, you can keep it for years and years. There's the world was full of handymen, the generation kind of before me, and almost every one of them would probably have a Wooster brush hanging in their basement somewhere that they cleaned out 100 times, and they can keep using. And that's what we try to do. If you throw yours away, that's okay too. We'll take the next sale, but you can use them. We give you the option to clean them out if you want to.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, is it a good thing or a bad thing if the people throw them away? But anyway,
yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead. So did you say there was 3 groups? There was
3 groups.
Employees and their families.
Yep.
End users.
And then the third group is our customers. And so and we say, in the order rank, a lot of companies will say, hey, put your customer first and everything else will take care of itself. And we joke, but we also tell our customers the same ranking, that we put you last. We hope you don't feel like you're last. But when we're making long-term decisions, we're doing it with our employees in mind. And we think that long-term, that's also going to benefit our customers. And 173 years later, I think that's sort of proven itself out. And we try to be the best partner we can be, obviously, to our customers. But we do put them third when we're making, big decisions for the company. And then, we talk about core values, and I'm not going to go through the whole list, but, we always just say, do the right thing. And I joke, you ever want to write a business book, there should be one that just, you open the first page, it says do the right thing, and then you close it, and that's the book. And Bill, the president before me, was really good at that. When decisions were hard, he would often just sort of sit back and say, what's the right thing to do? And it can give you a lot of clarity in difficult situations. And so we really live by that as a company. Do the right thing, and we'll sacrifice dollars today to earn business long term with our partners. And so we try to do the right thing. And then the next one that I'll talk about in the last one is a passion for quality. Right, you're not around 173 years because you've made perfect decisions for 173 years. You're around because you make good products. And if we can make good products and keep our people first, then we think we'll be around for another 173 years. And so that's what we talk about. We talk about what you can change and what you can't change. We can't change our culture, and we can't change our quality. And so those are the things that we can't change. And then things outside of that, are up for discussion for sure. And so that's kind of our company, I would say, in a brief nutshell. And then, the paint applicator company, if you're a professional painter, I would say, I'm making this number up, but I would say we have 99% brand awareness. Every professional painter knows us, and many DIYers know us. You're going to find us in, some of the major retailers around, and most paint stores around as well. We do have, a big competitor. Sherwin-Williams owns our biggest competitor, Purdy, which would be sort of the other name. I sometimes say, if you don't know paintbrushes and you want to understand it, Wooster and Purdy are the Ford and Chevy of automobiles, right? Everybody knows those two. And so, we've been around a long time. We think we have, the best products on the market. And we think that the people using them often keep coming back because we're providing them that consistent quality. So you buy a Wooster brush today, it's going to perform like the same one you're going to buy tomorrow.
I love it. Yeah. Well, so just to clarify for the audience, in case there's any confusion. So when you were talking about the three buckets, you mentioned your families and their employees. Then you mentioned the end user, and then you mentioned the customer. It's clear to me, but it might be confused. It might be confusing because you guys don't sell direct. You consider your customers to be the resellers, right? Like the channel. So
the retail, more like retailers. So
right.
Yeah, Home Depot, Ace Hardware, and then most private paint stores, things like that, Do It Best. All of those places you can find our products. So we consider those our customers. We consider the people using our product the end users. So they're up a notch.
Yeah. No, I got you. That's great. And that's great. I just wanted to make sure that was that was clear for the audience. Well, so you got Purdy and Wooster. For those of us that aren't in, well, first of all, let me ask you this. Do you guys make other paint application devices other than paintbrushes, like the rollers and all of that stuff?
Sure. Yeah, we have, our business is pretty diverse. So we have brushes, rollers, accessories, poles, frames that you would put on roller covers. So we make all of that. And really it's all made, I should mention also that it's all really made right here in Wooster, Ohio. About 95% of our products are all made right in Wooster, Ohio. If you come here, you would see we're very vertically integrated. We're not just doing the last piece of the puzzle. We're actually, in most cases, starting with the basic raw materials and putting them together fully. So even have our own wood handle factory now as well, where we're making some of our own wood handles.
That's
wood handle
cool.
machines,
That's great.
I should say. Yeah.
Well, and kudos for that, because I don't know the industry, I don't know the economics, but I would imagine that there might be a scenario where you guys could potentially shave some margin points, save a little bit of money here or there if you exported or if you imported certain pieces. And so it sounds to me like that's not ever something you guys would do, given how much you care about your folks and your employees. But for being American, truly American made, I think that's fantastic.
And that's really
companies.
But that's exactly why we do it, is for our people. We want to keep them gainfully employed, and quite frankly, we don't think we can get the quality anywhere else as well. And so, we're very, very proud of our people and the quality products that they produce, and so we want to keep it that way. That doesn't mean we won't bring some things in, fringe, but by and large, brushes and rollers, poles and frames are mostly coming right here from Wooster, Ohio.
So why are your products so high quality? What makes we can just stay with the actual brushes if it's easiest. What makes a Wooster paintbrush so much better than everyone else's? And they are, look, as a user of them, I can tell you that they are. I just don't know specifically how you guys do that or why. Why they're better.
Yeah, well, number one, you've got your just standard stuff when you're putting it on the wall. Very few brush marks. and high quality products that can be reused over and over. So a lot of times a paintbrush can work 1 or 2 times, but if you're not using high quality materials, particles in that paint stick, even though you can't see them, and you get the stiff parts in the brush. If you've had a brush that, even after you dip it in paint again, you still got a couple of what I would call stragglers that are stiff. Well, those are just going to leave lines in the paint. So, putting the paint on smoothly is a big key to it. But what we really think that we excel at the most in painting is our paintbrushes hold more paint. And so, if you're cutting in a line or trimming a line, one of the most difficult things is to get the brush into the line. And then as you're kind of going down, it's not so difficult. But each time you come into the line, you go down. And so we make it easier by the brush holds more paint. You can draw a longer line. You don't have to go into the line so much. So that's one part of it. The other part is, if you're a professional painter, do you make money putting paint on the wall or dipping in a bucket, right? And so the more time you can spend on the wall, the better you are. And we think our products do that, as well or better than anybody out there. And so that's what we sort of tout. And so the efficiency is a big piece of it. And then the quality aspects tie together with that to make sure that you're going to, have a product that's going to last you for as long as you intend it to.
Yeah. So is it fair to say that, you guys are the experts and you're willing to invest in using the right materials, and whether it be R&D, testing, or what have you, you figure out by investing in those things what makes the best product and then deliver it, right? Compared to somebody else that maybe throwing the cheapest possible material, bristle material or whatever. Really what differentiates you guys is you guys care enough to understand what makes the best quality, and then are willing to invest in the people and the resources to make it happen.
Yeah. I think that's exactly it. And look, I don't want to, bash our competitors. I think many of them make a high quality product. What we would say is the technology we use helps separate that. And so it doesn't mean they don't make a good product. It just means ours operates a little differently. And so, we try to, sort of really stay focused on what we're doing and continually improving what we're doing. Whether that's with new products or as paints change, we've had to adjust some of our products as well, because, 50 years ago, paints were all oil-based. And that required a different type of brush than water-based paints do today. And so, we've had to evolve as paints evolve to make sure that we're still able to put product on the wall efficiently. And some products translated well as that paint's changed, and some didn't. And so, over the course of time, we've just continued to adapt, and we've tried to partner with as many paint companies as we can, through the years to help, because applicators, the beauty of applicators, if you go to the store and you buy a couple of gallons of paint from whichever store, from whichever company, and you buy a cheap applicator and you go home and put it on the wall, and it looks bad, everyone's going to say, well, I'm never buying that paint again. They don't often blame the applicator. And so the paint companies have a real interest in making sure that people are using high quality applicators, because it helps their paint perform better, or perform as it should. So we try to partner with them as best we can. In some cases, they're our competitors, so that doesn't work out quite as well. But we try to make sure that our products work for the specific stores that they're in the best. And so, depending on the retailer, they would have different types of paint. We would have likely different types of brushes in each of those.
Gotcha. Look, and you and I were speaking a little bit before we started. We talk about it all the time in my company. How, look, whether you're talking about a business that makes widgets, or is an import company, or makes paintbrushes or circuit boards for computers, so much of business and strategy overlaps. And I'm sure that if you went back and listened to our last 10 minutes of our conversation, there's 10 or 12 other businesses. If you deleted, the word paint or paintbrushes and put in another product, so much of this is very similar from one business to another. And call me a business nerd or whatever, but it's fascinating. It's fascinating to me. So, but you mentioned that that Purdy and Wooster are sort of the Ford and the Chevy of the industry. I mean, let me back up. First of all, so who are the Wooster shareholders? Are you guys employee owned, or is it owned by a family, or?
It's closely held private, and the
Okay.
employees own a share through the profit sharing plan. So not an ESOP, but closely held private.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So, is it is the market, or the I guess the total addressable market that you guys play in, is it pretty saturated? I mean, are you trying to, do you have plans to increase, revenue by 20%, or is this more of a hold on the market share and continue to be the market leader? What's the strategy for Wooster going forward?
Yeah, quite frankly, it's not a lot different than it's been in the past, but we're really about slow growth, and so we believe that slow, stable growth is the best thing for our employees. And so, different companies that I've worked at said, hey, we got to get 15% sales growth every year, and what happens is you can do that for a while, but there aren't many companies that can sustain that 15% for 170 years. And what happens is they end up either having to back off, or something crashes, or they've got to lay folks off. And so what we really strive to do is sort of slow, consistent growth. And really historically, we've been pretty good at that. And so, being 173 years old, sometimes someone could think, well, how much more opportunity can there be out there? But there's actually immense opportunity for us to still grow. And so in 2021, we actually broke ground on a new 600,000 square foot facility because we were kind of out of space. And so, it's fully operational now. And it's really allowed us to do some things that we couldn't do before in terms of our shipping. And so we consolidated our shipping points and then opened up some space. So we have a kind of what we call Plant One, which is where our offices are and our factories. We got about 600,000 square feet here, and then we're using 400,000 of that 600,000 about 5 miles north of us. And so that's sort of prepared us what I would say is for our next level of growth. And the way that Wooster Brush thinks is always very long term. And so when we built that building, we needed 400,000 square feet. So we built 6. We're going to lease out that back 200,000 square feet, but we also have room on the land to build an additional 200,000 square feet. So, sort of short term, or the next 5 to 10 years, we're probably fine in the 400,000 we're at. If we need more, we've got 200,000 more, and then an additional 200,000 we could build long term. And so, we're preparing for growth, but we sort of do that over the long term, and try to think long term too when we're making decisions, so that they're nice, stable decisions.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
Yeah. So we are preparing for growth. We like to grow, and obviously COVID was probably a bigger spike than we've probably ever historically had with just DIY and renovations, and the housing market was going bananas. And we've been fortunate to hold on to all of that growth from COVID. And so even today, the overall market is down a little bit, but we're actually still thriving and growing slowly like we like to, which is great.
No, that's great. So when you guys think of growth, do you add new customers? Do you add new products to push through the existing customers? What's sort of the gold standard for slow growth?
Yeah, I mean, if you talked about the number of doors we were in and how that changes, it probably doesn't change drastically over time. But what we do is we try to expand what we have in each of those footprints. And so,
Gotcha.
We're pretty in the U.S. and Canada for sure. We're I don't know, saturated is not the right word, but we are in a lot of independent paint dealers. We're in one of the major big boxes, and we sort of stay in that lane at Home Depot, and then we're not in some of the other ones where our competitors own, right? Like Sherwin-Williams, for instance. But there's a lot of painters that shop that buy paint from Sherwin-Williams, and we hope that they have opportunity to buy Wooster brushes as well. And so there's a lot of opportunity out there for us. There is a lot. But I would say this, like our poles and frames are kind of industry standards. So oftentimes, even if someone's not using a Wooster brush or a Wooster roller cover, they're likely using our pole and frame. Or have one, at least one on their truck. And so what we try to do is get them to use a little more Wooster each year. And so our team has been really, really good at that, particularly these last couple of years. One of the benefits of COVID was, we have a lot of inventory. We carry a lot of inventory. We're not just in time or just in case, we always say. And so, so when COVID hit, we were one of the only folks that had inventory because everything sold out. And so a lot of the import stuff was off shelf for several months because the supply chain takes months to get built up coming from China. And so for a while, we were one of the only games in town when people wanted to do it. Well, they use our stuff. And the best way we can convert anybody is to put one in their hand. And so we got a lot of people that bought a Wooster brush maybe for the first time during COVID, used it, had the experience, and sort of said, oh, that's why you pay $4 more for a paintbrush, or that's why you pay $2 more for a roller cover, or whatever the case may be. And those people, you have a positive experience, and then they continue painting, right? And so we've been lucky to hang on to a lot of that customer that didn't have another option there for a while, and it was perfect. It was perfect kind of timing. I mean, COVID wasn't perfect. I don't mean to say that, but
no, I hear you.
But getting people to try our stuff, it really is the best way for them to understand.
Yeah, it's interesting. Your industry is really interesting, and the industry and your company in particular. I mean, painting is absent maybe some innovation with like the spray guns and things like that. People have been using paintbrushes to put paint on surfaces for a really long time. So there hasn't been, at least that I'm aware of, maybe I'm completely wrong, but it doesn't seem that there has been a lot of really disruptive innovation or let's call it disruptive change, because innovation's I don't want it to sound negative. It sounds like it's been a very steady, long-term industry that isn't burdened by just these crazy overnight changes. I'm curious, do you guys talk about, and is there concern about some type of whether technology innovation or a different type of paint that sort of changes things?
Sure. I mean, I think we try to stay up on that as much as possible. Technology, the way technology is going, anything can be possible in a few years. And so we try to make sure that we're staying close to, what's happening in our industry. And, interestingly, over time, visibly, it doesn't feel like there's been a lot of innovation. But if you look at what's happened in paint, and how it went from oil to water-based, and then no VOC, and all of these, and I'm simplifying that dramatically, but these paint companies have done amazing things with paint in terms of coverage, in terms of how it smooths out on the wall. And so it's what I would say is, to the average person, like myself, and you just look at a wall, right? It looks the same as it did 50 years ago when you painted it, or similar. But there has been a ton of technology, and the same thing goes with brushes. I always joke, when I started here at Wooster Brush, I thought you had a wood handle and you tape some straw to the end, and how complicated could it be? And then you go through the factory and you watch the craftsmanship of our people. You watch the all of the raw materials that have to come together in a very specific way, and the way that we do it, and all the steps that it takes to sort of make a paintbrush, for instance. And you realize that there's just a ton of engineering in each of these products. And so to the average person, and in this case, the way that you're talking about it is, a brush 50 years ago kind of looks like a brush now, but what it's doing is dramatically different. And so that doesn't, maybe somebody's going to come out with a way to snap their fingers and change the color of the wall behind me to blue. And that is possible. But, the other thing is, in terms of DIY stuff, painting is on the lower end of what things cost.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know what it would cost to have an LED wall in every house, but the
Yeah.
technology's not maybe there yet. And there's a lot of older houses. And so there has been innovation. It's not like, maybe an electric car is to a gas engine, or, an airplane is maybe to a car, or however you want to describe it. But there has been a fair amount of that innovation, and we've sort of had to either be at the forefront or behind. And so, I look at our logo behind me, and you see above the T is an angle paintbrush. And so 85 years ago, we invented the angle paintbrush. And so before that, everything was flat. And that was done because it's at a 13 or 14 degree angle, so that when you're painting on the wall, it helps your wrist have a little less fatigue. And so those are all innovations that have now become sort of industry standards. And so, again, we're not sending people to the moon, but those are all very cool things, cool things that have happened over time.
No, for sure. And look, and I certainly don't want to sell the industry or you guys short, and certainly didn't mean to imply that.
No, I'm sorry.
It didn't. No, I think I did, right? I think I did. So just to be fair, I recognize that there's a ton of complex chemistry and material engineering that goes into paints, whether, like you mentioned, coverage and mold resistance and light, all types of things like that. And I would imagine that whenever one of those things changes, you got to figure out how that impacts, the material or the brush material. And so you guys got to keep up.
Yeah, but we also do look at emerging technologies and see, could that change, like sprayers and things like that.
Yeah,
we're always watching that, and we always joke. There's I don't know if you ever watched Mr. Bean. This probably ages me.
Oh yeah.
But he had an episode where he had a paint bomb, and he kind of like taped off the whole room and put some dynamite into a paint, blew it up, and so we always joke, what's the paint bomb that we have to be watching for,
right?
And so right now that's not there, but we never know what the future might hold. But we'll have to just continue to adapt and change, obviously, with that.
Yeah, and that's exactly sort of what I was getting at or thinking of. Tesla recently unveiled a bunch of really interesting products. One of which is a robot that does household chores, I guess you'd say. So it's going to be interesting to see, what the future holds and what things are possible, right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe you could put some paint on the wall and change it from flat to high gloss by, I don't know, turn in some button or knob or something.
Right.
But
you see the walls, like the windows now, that you can click a button and it sort of frosts over. That type of technology does exist. It just hasn't made its way into the mainstream yet, and that's not necessarily red to blue or green, but
yeah, I got you. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, so what what keeps you up at night? Is it with regard to the company? Are there things out there that doesn't? Obviously, we don't know if there's a paint bomb that's coming out, tomorrow that changes everything. But as a leader, what are the things that concern you with regard to the next 5-10 years?
Yeah, I think, the interesting thing is, you'd say what keeps me up at night. And I think typically I would say, worrying about our people is kind of what keeps me up at night. But the thing that gives me comfort is our people. And so we've got sort of that nice balance of doing things the way we've done them a long way, but also injecting lots of new. And you can imagine in a 173-year-old company that it's not uncommon to hear, well, that's just the way we've always done it. And so, one of the things that I wanted to do when I came in as president was clearly define what can't change, so that the other things were sort of on limit to change. And so, that's where we talk about culture and quality. And those are the things that really can't change. And how maybe, I always joke, but how an invoice is processed through accounting does not make the Wooster Brush Company the Wooster Brush Company. but a lot of things were held on to like that. And so that's what we've really tried to focus on, is here are the things that can't change. Now let's work on optimizing some of the other things. And so I talked about longevity, and I'm getting a little off topic here, but I talked about longevity of the company. And one of the great things is they know how, everybody that's been here for 40 years knows how everything is done. One of the benefits that I was able to bring kind of as an outsider is well, here's how other folks have done it. But it's not just as simple as doing it the way other people do it. I think, there's a lot of wisdom in the way Wooster Brush has done things, which is a little bit countercultural, which is, they have never tried to sort of maximize profits in the current year, right? We're always thinking long term. We never have to, hit a quarter or ship some trucks out at the end of the month to hit a month. We're not focused on that. We know, anytime you do that, you're just disrupting the future. And so we try to stay stable. But one of the, but combining kind of the new with the way that Wooster Brush has done it, and finding, not one way or the other, but finding sort of a balance in there has been one of the things that sort of has helped me, going forward. But it also opened my eyes when I came here. At first, I would say, why do we do that? That's so dumb, right? Or that's, maybe I didn't say that out loud, but you think that sometimes, and then you really have to sit back and think, okay, every decision, the older I get, I realize every decision you make has a yin and a yang, right? There's going to be some positives to it, and there's going to be some negatives to it. And so the way that Wooster Brush always did things in the past had some negatives, which were, maybe blatant in my face, but then I had to really think about, well, what are the positives? And so when we change, I always say we're a cruise ship. We're not a dinghy. It takes us a while to turn. We don't want to change things quickly. We want to do them gradually over time. And so that's what we try to do, in combining a little bit of the new with the old, and finding what I would say is, not the way that I did it before, but the new Wooster way, has been really one of the things that we talk about and try to incorporate. And so, we're really trying to prepare for the future, prepare for growth, do some things that we haven't done in the past, like we put some automation in our shipping at the new facility, to prepare for the future as best we can, so that we can grow, without adding a ton of people. People are tough to come by these days, and so we want to be able to grow without adding people, because that means more profit sharing for our folks, and that's really what we're driving to do. So I went on a major tangent there. I forgot the original question, but
that was great. No, that was great. Something that strikes me is that to have a 173-year-old business is very unusual. Partially because it's hard to stay in business for that long, but also because we live in such a transactional business culture, right? Where mergers and acquisitions and buying and selling and spinoffs and this division and that division. How in the world has the Wooster Brush Company stayed independently owned throughout its life? I'm certain that you guys had to get approached routinely by institutional investors, potential strategic buyers, desperately wanting to acquire you guys.
That would be true. We do get approached. We do get approached a fair amount from outside folks of all different types, and I would say that our shareholders typically have the same values that I've talked to you about today, and so that they're not interested in making the buck today. For sure, they could probably do well on a return, but what they're interested in is kind of the long term, and they're interested in the people. Most of our shareholders, probably all of our shareholders, are either former employees or descendants of former employees.
Oh wow, okay.
So it's not an ESOP. It sort of operates with that mentality, and so the people that worked here had a great career, hopefully are doing very well in retirement, and so they'll pass the shares on to their children, or so they're really aligned. And so what's kept us how we are is our shareholders are aligned with management, and it's always to put our employees first. And so, honestly, that's what gets me out of bed. It's like, I worked at lots of different places that treated me very well. But we were most focused on making money. And I want to make money here for our people, but the fact that the more we make, the more they get, really gives me true purpose and sort of getting out of bed every day. And so just been very fortunate to come here, and then to be able to be president at this company is just an honor of a lifetime for sure.
That's fantastic. So if I were to sort of be a fly on the wall or sneak into a meeting and ask your team, your executive team, your direct reports, if I were to ask, look, hey, what's Ben like as a leader? What do you think? How do you think they would describe you?
Yeah, they'd probably laugh at first.
They say Ben and leader, that's an oxymoron.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. We don't know. He doesn't lead. I think they would say that I really listen to them, or try to listen to them. And so, look, I'm a salesman and sales and marketing background. And so when I joke, when I became president, I had a pretty good idea of what I thought I was going to do. And then COVID decided to sort of mix that up, right? And so all of a sudden you sort of get what I would joke as a master's degree in production. And so, I was able to sort of dive in and do that. And the guy that runs our engineering on the other side is, in his 42nd year, I think. And so he sort of knows it. And so I don't have to tell him what to do. I don't have to, guide him engineeringly in any way. That's not even a real word, and he would make fun of me for saying it. But, I'm just here to help him hire the right people and help really set the vision. And I always say that my job is just to set the vision. I think, and I hope they would describe me like that, set the vision and then sort of let them work out the way that they need to achieve that. And then obviously we do some of that together. But it's really collaborative. I hope people would call me collaborative. I tend to joke around a lot. I think, if I'm going to work all day at something, I want to have fun. I want to enjoy the people I'm around. I want them to, hopefully enjoy it as well. And so, sometimes, even in the wrong times, I can be humorous, to lighten the mood. And I think, that's just my style. I just try to be who I am. I don't know that, I'm always the most impressed with myself. But I think I genuinely care, and I help them try to solve their problems. And I hope that they would say that, as well. Those two things, and try to make their job easier. Just clear hurdles. If you can do that as a leader, set the vision and then clear hurdles. They're the smart ones. So they're the ones that are going to come up with the best. Them and their teams,
right?
Going to come up with the best solutions to problems.
No, good stuff. Good stuff. Well, so just one more question. I got to ask, if you could change one thing at the Wooster Company, just by snapping your fingers or overnight, there's one thing that you could change, what would it be?
Oh, that's a difficult.
That's putting you on the spot. I'm putting you on the spot.
Put me on the spot. I'm gonna talk about people a little bit, but I wish that if there was one thing I could change, I wish that I could make decisions that were better for our people in the short term. Because sometimes, when you're making long-term decisions for people, that means you're making short-term decisions that aren't in the best benefit of them today. And so we try to look at those long-term decisions, and it's difficult. I don't know that I would change that, but that's probably one of the biggest struggles is, you have to go out and make a decision, and those can be widespread. And when I was in sales, I always felt it was easier to find win-wins. And when you have 600 employees, I joke that no matter what decision I make, 50 of them are going to be mad about it.
Yeah.
And so that's hard because, sometimes making the best long-term decision for our employees harms 50 people in the short term, or harms, some amount of people some way, whether we change the schedule and it doesn't work with their child care or things like that. Those are probably the most difficult aspects of the job. I don't know that I would change a lot because I feel so fortunate to be here. So, are there things that make me pound my head against the wall every day? Yeah, but some of those things on the other end are also why Wooster Brush is 173 years old, has the brand recognition it does, the attention to quality that it does, and so often the things that make me bang my head against the wall, I like to go faster. But we're an organization that needs to change slowly. It's just the way that our people are wired. And that creates so much stability, but it also, makes you sometimes a little less opportunistic in the short term.
Right.
And so, if we could be a little more opportunistic and keep all of those other things, and maybe that would be what I would change. And so we're working on that, but we sort of have to prepare ourselves, so that we're ready when that next opportunity comes, that we can be opportunistic without sort of a total change in direction.
Yeah. That's a great answer. And I love this. I love the company. I love this story. Feels like, this country was built largely with a Wooster Brush Company kind of in every region or every community, or maybe sometimes several. Unusual, unfortunately, to find a company that's been around as long, that's still privately held, that still cares about its employees, that hasn't laid off anyone since 1954, and you can't last 174 years without great leadership, right? So obviously you follow a lot of great leaders before you, and would not have been selected if you weren't one yourself. So I appreciate the opportunity to get to know a little bit about you, but also the Wooster Brush Company, what makes you guys tick, and just the industry as a whole. So sincere thank you for giving me over an hour this afternoon. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk. And I say I appreciate that I get a platform to people heard about how I grew up. That's exciting, but it's more exciting to be able to talk about the company. This company will be around a long time after me, hopefully. And so if we can make the best decisions now, so that the leaders 20 years from now, 30 years from now, have an easier time, then that's really what we're trying to do, because that's what the people before me did. And we've been fortunate. So one of the cool stats, I think, is, in 173 years, I'm only the 10th president.
Wow.
And so you talk about, the tenure of people, but also, that the company sticks with folks, right? Not every year for 173 has been great.
Right.
Most years I think have been pretty good, but not have been great. And so the company really sticks by its people, but it also sticks by its leaders, as long as they care for the people, right? That's at the heart of it. As long as our hearts are in the same place, caring for people, that's one of the coolest things about this place. So I love that I get to talk and meet you and be on a show that astrophysicists were on not long ago. But I love more that I get to talk about our people, talk about this company that I really had very little to do with building, but I want to make sure that I sort of stay on top of that it keeps growing in the future, and I'm just proud to be a part of it.
Well, that's very apparent. Just so you know, it's clear within the first several minutes that your humility about your position, and that you feel like sort of the appreciative beneficiary that is currently, the captain of a great company, with the sort of reverence for all the people that came before you. All of that is very clear to me in your answers and how you sort of handle yourself and talk about the company. Is there anything about the company or the industry that we didn't talk about that you were hoping that you'd have a chance to?
I don't think so. I think, when I talk about the company, it's really our people. And so, you talk about widgets, right? Sometimes I forget we make paintbrushes, because we don't, in my position, I'm not always worried about, the product that we're making, because I'm worried about the quality of it. But our people are controlling that. And lots of parts of our organization, we say, are still purposefully inefficient. It is particularly in the factory, where we haven't found a way that a machine can do it as well or better than a human. And so if you came through our factory, you would see a lot of hands-on touching of products. And so, we're not going to sacrifice quality. I'm saying the same thing over and over, and I apologize. But no,
that's all right.
But this is a great opportunity to talk about. And I feel like we were able to touch on, all the key parts of Wooster Brush.
No, that's great. That's great. Do you guys care? Do you guys care about the people there? I'm teasing.
Yeah.
And hopefully that didn't come across as I was not at all trying to make light of it or make fun of it.
Absolutely.
I was trying to make the point that almost every answer has come back to the people, and it is impressive and admirable that you guys care so much for your people. Comes across and seems like it permeates through every decision you guys make, everything that you do. And there's probably a lot of other companies in the world that could, learn a couple of things from that. It's not an accident that you guys have been around for as long as you have, that have the market share that you have and do as well as you do. In other words, I think if more people spent more time thinking about how to take care of their people, more companies spent time thinking about how to take care of their people instead of how much money they were going to make or the margin, then they might, do as well as the Wooster Brush Company has.
Right. So, and that's one of the benefits of being private is you can make decisions that are long-term like that versus sort of maximizing share price. It's a challenge that different leaders have. That they have to do. We believe that our model would work anywhere to create long-term success. But we know that it's not for every customer. It's not for every company, and it's for sure not every person loves the way that we do it. This place we have a lot of great employees, but not every person that's ever come to work here loves it. They want to maximize their own dollars, or they want to do something different. And that's okay. But we believe that we'll get the buy-in that we want from our folks the way we do it. So I said it again, and I appreciate it. I appreciate the time today, and it was great talking to you.
So likewise, Ben. All right, take care. I really appreciate it.
All right, have a great week.
Don't forget, everybody, you can find Boundary Breakers in a lot of places. You can watch our episodes on the Boundary Breakers YouTube channel, or you can listen to each podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any of the other major podcasting platforms. Thanks for listening.